Alright, Caliber 3 Precisions review. I did do like a first impressions and sort of like an early review. That was quite a long video, and I was just sort of, my reaction and first impressions and experiences when I was first trying out these trucks. So if you did watch this, there may be some repetition. The goal of this video is to be a little bit more concise and just like a traditional, quick, in-depth, detailed review that doesn't sort of drag on like the last video did. So if you didn't see the last video, Liam Morgan was kind enough to reach out to me and actually send me a set of pre-production Caliber 3 Precisions before they actually even announced the trucks. So I have had these trucks for about 2 months now. I've been riding them since just after the new year. The trucks went up for like pre-order, I guess, pre-order in mid-January, and that has now closed. But the trucks are supposed to be shipping out early March, and I believe when the trucks start shipping out, you'll also be able to just purchase them for normal order as well, and they'll be in longboard shops and stuff like that. So in the coming weeks, actually, these are going to be broadly available. I know a lot of you have probably already ordered your pre-order sets of these trucks. So let's start off with the specs of these trucks. These are Caliber 3s, so they have the same geometry as the Caliber 3 trucks. However, these come in 50 degree, 44 degree, 30 degree, 25 degree base plate angles, and the hangers are 125 millimeters to 135 millimeter spaceable. The set that I've got are just 125, they don't have spaces, so I was restricted in that regard, and I went with 44 degrees in the front and 25 in the rear. They've done a really cool thing where each base plate angle has a different color, so mine 44 degree is blue and 25 is purple, and the 30 degree were green and the 50 degree were like a pinky kind of color. The trucks are CNC machined, which we refer to as precision, which means they are more precise. They are exact measurements down to whatever small number that it is. Just like, other precision trucks like Eras, Valkyries, Ronins, whatever. These are like a CNC precision truck. Side note, these are also very, very light trucks, I noticed. Even compared to other precisions I owned, they're just quite light, which surprises me because they don't have any sort of cutouts or hollow sections in the geometry. They're quite a solid looking truck, but they are very lightweight. I'm not sure how much that affects the performance, but it's just, they come with CNC washers. These trucks have 5 millimeters of rake, which is the same as the Caliber 3 cast trucks. You can also flip the hangers to have negative rake, which is the same thing you could do on the cast trucks. I personally didn't actually mess with that because I enjoy positive rake, not negative, but it's an option that you can do. They come stock with 88 wheel code, 95A bushings, short bushings all around, which is a bit interesting. We can talk about that later. And they come with this shim, which sits on the board side, underneath the board side bushing, and allows you, if you remove the shim, to put in a tall bushing. They also have long enough kingpins to run a tall bushing roadside, so you can choose whether you ride these with short bushings or tall bushings. Just however you want, you can switch them out. However, the 50 degree base plate does not come with the removable shim, so you don't have the option to run a tall bushing board side on the 50 degree trucks. They also come with an 88 wheel co urethane insert that sits inside the hanger around the kingpin. This is quite common for a variety of different trucks. It's actually the first time I've had an insert, and you can really feel the difference. Again, we'll talk about that more later, but that's a cool feature that they come with. And last, but probably most excitingly, they're fully compatible with Caliber 3 trucks. So that means you can take any part from the Precision and swap with any part from the Caliber 3 cast truck, excluding the pivot cup. The pivot cups aren't compatible, but you can take off the hanger from the Precisions and put it on your cast base plate, or take the hanger from your cast and put it on your Precision base plate. And this just allows you to have much more variety of options with your setup. You can have more options with base plate angles and hanger widths, and adjust it as you see fit depending on which gear you own, which is a really cool feature, and it is something that I tried and tried out and messed with when I was testing out these trucks. All right, I'm gonna get into how they perform. With trucks, I always find it a little bit tricky to review trucks. There's such personal preference when it comes to trucks, so I'm gonna try my best to sort of describe objectively how they felt and how they performed for me, and then I'll separate that with like my experience and how I feel about them. So I guess before I get into how they felt for me, I'll explain how I have mine set up. I did try them a fair amount stock, which you would have seen if you watched my first impressions. They were surprisingly good, just stock as they come. But I ended up riding 85A Venom tall barrels in the front, and 95A Venom tall barrels in the rear. And I found that with the tall nut, I couldn't quite adjust them how I wanted to, and so I actually put a short nut on the front truck, which just let me figure out how tight I wanted the bushing to be in the front, whereas in the rear I didn't really have that problem. I just ran it flush, and this felt awesome for me. And when I skated the wider hangers, which I'll talk about in a bit as well, I actually found that, you know, having the extra leverage of being 160 instead of 125, the front livened up more than I wanted to, so I went with 87 bushings, just stepped up a Duro in the front, and that seemed to make it feel equivalent or the same. So that's how I had mine set up. The 3 words I would use to describe these trucks is responsive, solid, and snappy. So we'll start with responsive. When I say responsive, I don't mean wobbly or divey or twitchy. I mean responsive in a good way. Like when you move, it moves how you want them to move. They don't really lag, they don't feel dead, but they also don't feel sketchy and tippy and divey like crazy. They are very nimble, very darty, and they do what you want them to do. A little bit different to what I normally ride, sort of feels more racy. I guess it kind of feels how like short bushing symmetrical setups feel to me compared to how tall bushing split setups typically feel. I'm not sure if that's the best way to explain it, but to me it felt very responsive in a sense of like I would go to flick a carve and it would just dart. And rather than sort of lean and flow, even with the tall bushings, it was very responsive and snappy and darty in the turn. Solid, yeah, I think probably one of the most important features of a truck is that it feels solid. So this may not be the best word to describe them, as most trucks, you would hope, feel solid. But at the same time, that I feel like that makes it an important thing to include, is these do feel very solid and stable, meaning like when you're tucking or going in a straight line, they're staying there, they're solid. You feel comfortable, you feel solid on the board. It doesn't feel like they're trying to wiggle around underneath you. They really felt like they had that center of knowing where they wanted to be. And part of that leans kind of into the snappy feeling, which is that after doing carves or turning or slides, they would sort of snap back to that center point, which is a really nice feature to have in a truck. It kind of makes them a bit more forgiving. Coming out of slides or, you know, trying to rail corners and things like that, they're going to snap back to that center point and keep you going solid. Like, it also helps a lot when you hit like a bump in the road or a chunder patch or some sticks or gravel or something and you kind of wiggle out and go crazy. These trucks want to get you back to the center rather than sort of exponentially wiggle out and throw you off the board. The snappiness also comes in when you're doing slides. You could see it in some of the videos. I know I mentioned it in the first impressions. It was something noticeable to me right away. Was you go to hook up your slide, they just snap right back in, which was really, really nice actually. It's different to what I'm used to. I'm used to a more flowy, surfy setup, which sort of I can ease out and ease into my slides. This is very defined. It's very like slide, okay, we're hooking up. But not too aggressive. I didn't find them like too grippy actually. Even for being narrow trucks, I was free riding them a lot on this setup as this is, with the yellow Kevins flipped on my Rocket Leon, and I didn't find it too grippy. I found the snappiness, the good kind of snappiness, where it's like you just feel really dialed and onto it. It hooks up when you want it to in a good way. Stock, and I'm assuming probably with short bushings, these trucks become snappier, more responsive, more darty and divey. Which probably makes them a little bit more difficult to slide with the split setup. When you're on a symmetrical setup, it might not be as bad. But yeah, that's kind of how they felt stock, just like those things sort of turned up. And then when you jump and put on a wider hanger, on all the things the same, you sort of go the other way. It ends up feeling a little bit more leany and flowy, a little less responsive, a little less divey. Which kind of makes sense because you're widening it out, you're making everything feel a bit wider and spaced out, and boaty is a word people often use to describe it. It also slides a lot easier with the wide hangers. You know, I wouldn't even consider riding these smaller Primo wheels on the narrow hangers, but when I put the wide hangers on, I can put the smaller freeridey wheels and really enjoy like just a slidier slide. So that's kind of how they like perform sort of objectively. I know I kind of just threw a bunch of different descriptive words, but hopefully you can kind of catch all those different words, put them together, and have an idea of how the trucks feel. Now I'll jump into sort of my experience and my personal thoughts on the trucks and how I use them, and yeah, my just general feeling about the trucks. So to start with, I actually put them on my race board. I was kind of thinking, you know, they're 125, they're a big split, I'm gonna ride them on my race board and then see how that goes. But after the first time skating them completely stock, feeling like I could poke out stand-up slides, I thought, well, why not just try them on my regular board that I ride all the time? And they felt great, actually. So I ended up skating them on my Rocket Leon with these yellow Kevins flipped. Probably about 80% of the skating I've done on these trucks has been on this exact setup. It's kind of surprising to me because I normally ride 160mm trucks on this board, which is a fair bit wider. And yeah, for free ride, for stand-up slides, for everything, this felt great. If I wanted to ride those little wheels, like I mentioned, I would put the wide hangers on just to see how that was gonna go. And for downhill and faster stuff, I just put on mags on the same trucks, and they're probably like, my board's probably a little wide still for this, but it seemed to work really well for me. So I just felt comfortable on this board. I think personally, as the way I skate, I prefer like a slightly bigger board and a slightly longer stance. And so the short board wasn't working for me, but it was really interesting to put these sort of narrower split trucks on my regular sized board and then feel great. The key word really for the trucks is snappy. I know I talked about it a lot. But even on this board for freeride, they just snapped into that hookup. These are quite slidey wheels, and they still felt like I had that edge grip and could just snap out of the slides, which was really actually cool for trying to take more racy lines and hands down lines as well. They worked super well for that. Which it could be partly that I have such a big split as well. 25 is pretty low for a rear base plate. That's leaning much more into the race downhill style of skating than it is a freeride style of skating. But yeah, that's how they felt for me, was just really snappy, controllable, and just made me want to go fast and go like downhill mindset on them. The biggest surprise to me was how freerideable these were the way I have them set up. So 125 is fairly narrow and 45-25 is a fairly big split. It's typically not what people would ride for stand-up freeride. And I was just doing stand-up freeride as good as I ever have. Like no different to on my other setups. Stand-up toe sides, like holding them out at the spot we were skating, and you know, stand-up heel sides not feeling too tippy or like I was gonna grip up, which was really surprising and pretty cool. And it's winter here at the moment as well, so all the roads are colder, I'm less sort of in skate shape, and I was feeling top of my game for freeride on the setup, which is pretty cool considering I got the like racy kind of spec of the trucks. So that kind of shows that if you were looking for a narrow truck to freeride, these might actually be a really good option for that as well. As far as downhill and speed goes, unfortunately I haven't been able to take them too fast. I probably maxed out somewhere between 40 and 45 at one of our sort of downhill freeride spots. I would like to take them faster, but I think typically most skaters don't really go above 40, 45 anyway, and so if you're watching this review, that's probably about where you're gonna go as fast as. And to me, they felt great at that speed. It's not like I got towards that speed and was freaking out and they felt solid. I just couldn't get to roads that could go faster on. So I feel confident on them. I'm actually going to Puerto Rico this week to race and skate and everything for that Pirate Downhill event, and I'm gonna be riding these for the race. I have complete confidence in them. I don't know how fast the race is, it doesn't really matter. I'm confident I can go as fast as whatever road I'm gonna be on these trucks. I just unfortunately haven't been able to actually take them physically that fast yet, but they are very solid, very stable, and for sliding at speed, they just feel comfortable and predictable and just snappy and what you want for that kind of setup. All right, some I guess little extra side notes. I did mention it in the other one. It was pretty much the only question anyone asked me, but unfortunately you won't be able to core wheels on these trucks on the 25-degree base plate. I don't imagine on the 30-degree base plate either. Caliber actually commented on this and they said it was something they were sort of on the fence about, and it's because they've done the long kingpin to be able to run tall bushings, and so they sort of went back and forth about, well, if we have tall bushings you can't core wheels, but if we do short bushings you can, and they came out and decided it was better to have that tall bushing option but not be able to core wheels for those low degree base plates, especially because these days most people riding the low angle base plate aren't typically coring wheels. I know some of you out there will be, and that's maybe unfortunate for you, but it's just, you know, a reality. They couldn't physically do it both, and they decided that the tall bushing was more important, which I think is, that's fair enough in my opinion. I used to have a symmetrical setup that I would throw my small wheels on just to core wheels, so you could just do something like that, or maybe not core wheels. But I imagine the 45 and 50 degree base plates, you'll be able to core wheels on those. I had mentioned it earlier, we talked about a little bit that how compatible they are with the Caliber 3. I think this is an awesome feature because it allows skaters to try different things. You only have to buy 2 of the trucks and then a set of casts or whatever, like 2 precision trucks to then be able to try a variety of different things. So you can try widths 125, 135, you can get Caliber 3s in 160 and 180. You can try tall bushings, you can try short bushings, you can try some tall, some short. There's just whole different ways you can do it. Rake, negative rake, rakeless if you get the Caliber 3s with no rake. It's really, really cool. I know when I was first getting into skating, that's what my friends and I used to do. We used to try all sorts of different stuff. And so if you're at that stage where you don't have as much money, maybe you don't know what your preferences are like that, you have so many options to try and muck around with these trucks, which is just a really cool feature to have. I also want to comment on the insert. I don't know a whole lot about inserts. Like I said, this is actually the first trucks I've owned with that urethane insert. I know it makes a huge difference. It sort of helps with the center point, it helps with reducing slop and all those good things. I don't know how long they last. This sits very tightly. I was finding that, because I took the hangers on and off quite a few times as I was switching between the narrow and wide and whatnot. I would pull the hanger off, the insert would stay on the kingpin, but it would move a little bit. So I was kind of pulling it off the kingpin and then sort of pushing it back on there, and it fits very snugly. So I'm not sure how long they last, how durable they are. That's something to think about. I'm sure you'll be able to purchase replacements. I know that's a thing with other trucks, is that they do wear out over time and then they don't do their job as well. So that's something to keep in mind. But I thought the insert felt really good, and that's probably part of what contributes to how good these trucks feel. Someone had asked somewhere about the ride height. Does it match between the different angle base plate? And Caliber answered yes. So whatever combination of base plate angles you purchase, the ride heights will stay the same. You don't have to worry about trying to match them yourself with risers or things like that. So that's always good to know. That's a helpful thing. I did mention it. You can flip the hanger to have negative rake. Some people enjoy this. Some people like to split the rake and have rake in the front, negative in the back. It's not something I enjoy, so I didn't try it, but it's an option that's there, which is helpful. If you don't know, rake makes the trucks sort of respond more as the more you turn. So if you have negative rake, the more you lean, the less you turn. It sort of makes the trucks feel a lot more dead and move a lot less. Some people really like this for free riding, being able to throw out your stand-up slides and stuff and not have the trucks move around as much. Just another cool feature about the trucks. I did already mention it as well, but I found running a short nut at the front for the tall bushings very helpful. The tall nut, once it got flush, it sort of was almost over compressing where I wanted it to be, and so I was able to put on the tall nut, screw it down a bunch, and just have a bit more room to play with where I wanted the bushing tension to be at. They don't come with the short nut, so you have to get that from a different truck. If you have a set of Caliber 3s, you can just chuck that on. That's what I did, but I just figured that was maybe a helpful side note. If you're tuning the trucks and you put tall bushings in, I would recommend using the short nut, at least at the front. Okay, recommendations. First off the bat, I did say this in the first impressions review as well, but if you're a first-time precision truck buyer, 100% recommend these trucks for a few reasons. 3 main reasons: the price, the compatibility, adjustability aspect of them, and the performance. So these trucks are only $150 per truck, making it $300 for a set. I think that's like the cheapest trucks that are out in the market right now. The compatibility, adjustability aspect of the truck just makes them perfect for, I don't want to say a beginner, because beginners probably wouldn't be looking at precisions or don't really need precisions, but someone who's looking at buying their first set of precisions, It just means you don't have to know exactly what you're looking for because you have room to adjust and change things with your setup as you go. Not many precision trucks will allow you to do that. There are other truck companies out there that have adjustable, parts of widths or angles or whatever, but the fact that you can just pick and choose and swap and change between any of the Caliber 3 Precisions or Caliber 3 casts for that price point there's nothing else like that on the market right now. So that's huge when you're learning, you're trying to find your own style and your way of skating. It's just huge. I can't even express how much, like, when I was 17, 18 years old, didn't have a ton of money, but was looking at getting in my first set of Precisions, how much this would have been, like, exciting to me. I would have definitely bought these trucks back then because of those options that you have to play with. If you are considering buying these trucks, I probably would differentiate between whether you are going to be doing more downhill, grip, race style drifts, hands down kind of slides, or you're going to be doing more free riding. So you're going to want to think about which base plate angles you want. Obviously the widths are going to be 125 to 35 either way, but if you're going into it with a downhill racing mindset, then you want to think about doing the biggest split, going for that 50-25. If you really want to run tolls, then obviously the 45-25. But if you're thinking you want to free ride them a lot more, you like doing stand-up slides, you want to be able to do everything, I would probably recommend going for that 30 plate in the rear. I have the 25 and I did stand-up free ride it and I enjoyed it. But I do think having a bit of a higher degree, having a bit more nimbleness and maneuverability in the back is just going to be a little bit easier for free ride. So that's something to consider. But yeah, so for beginners, like if you're really new to skating, I don't typically recommend precision trucks in general. I actually think on the market at the moment, Caliber 3 cast trucks are probably the best trucks for beginners. So I would start with that, and then you get an idea of what the trucks are going to sort of feel like. And then later down the line, it's going to be an easy transition to Precisions because you've already been riding the same geometry. If you've been skating a long time, you've already owned, Rogues, Valkyries, Ronins, Rojas, whatever. I don't really know if you have any reason to get these other than if you just want to try them. I couldn't really tell you what's better. I don't, mess around with too many different trucks all the time. Other than if you are interested, that you think they sound good, I would go for it. They are high performing. I would quite happily ride these ongoing. And I've been riding Precisions for 7 years at this point, and these are just as good, if not better, than half the other stuff out there. So if you've already owned Precisions, you think these look interesting, maybe you're on wider Precision trucks, you're looking to go a little narrower, highly recommend them for that as well. But yeah, this has been my more sort of review, like actual review for these trucks. Hopefully it was helpful. I do find trucks pretty tricky to review and explain, so hopefully I've been able to give a somewhat good idea of how the trucks feel and perform. A lot of people are going to be riding these very soon. I think I said at the start of the video, the pre-orders have finished and the trucks are supposed to be shipping out early March, which is only a couple of weeks away. So yeah, it's going to be cool to see other people riding them, other people's perspectives on them, and just a bunch of cool, colorful Caliber Precisions are going to be out there this year, which is cool to see. Feel free to comment any questions you have about the trucks. I have been riding them. I will be riding them. Sometimes I forget things when I make these videos. So if you have a question specifically about the trucks, feel free to comment it below or reach out to me on Instagram or whatever. And hopefully I can answer it to some extent. Once again, huge thank you to Liam and Caliber Trucks for sending me these trucks. It really means a lot to be sort of considered as someone who can actually give a good review on gear that's coming out. So yeah, that really means a lot to me, and I'm super stoked to have gotten these trucks. So just big thanks to Liam and Caliber Truck Co. for the trucks. And yeah, if you like this video, give it a like. If you haven't subscribed yet, consider subscribing. Got a lot more videos coming as we get into the skate season for 2024. And yeah, thanks for watching.